from the summit of Dhaulagiri.
Uh, so getting back to your questions, my main objective for this expedition is, of course, climb Dhaulagiri, one without using supplemental oxygen. That's my motto since I read book from Ed Wiester's No Shortcuts to the Top. Ed Wiester's, just for an FYI, Ed Wiester's is a guy from North America who climbed all 14 8,000 meter peaks without using supplemental oxygen. So he's been a huge inspiration, and also from various factors I've read the reasons for not using supplemental oxygen is to experience the dead zone as is, and also just see how my body performance in the extreme altitudes like dead zone, and then see how far I can push my limits, and just go from there. And also carrying an oxygen bottle is heavy, of course, and that's one of the reasons to cut down, because every weight counts in a high altitude. And also from some news I read, there will be a malfunction, or there could be a malfunction of the oxygen mask, which will lead you to you should descend if there is a malfunction, because once you start using oxygen, your body gets already used to the additional supplemental oxygen, and if there is any malfunction, you just have to descend. There is no other alternative, because your body won't get used to that short time less supplemental oxygen. So after considering all these things, my main reason to not use oxygen, and I've climbed Manaslu in September 2021 the same way, without using supplemental oxygen and without using a personal Sherpa. So my main motto for any climbs I do, expeditions, and during my training too, I always have to have some kind of purpose to to keep going for myself. That's a huge motivation for me, doing something useful for others, at the same time for me, pushing limits or anything. So previously, while I was training for Manaslu or while climbing for Denali, I've raised funds for summits in solidarity in US for the racial indiscrimination, and during training for Manaslu, and also I've raised for Himalayan Trust, the foundation founded by SR Edmund Hillary, for the kids in Nepal for their education. And while climbing Manaslu, I raised funds for Nepal Youth Foundation in Kathmandu, for the kids for their schooling, well-being, health, and whatnot. Very good organization, but for Dhaulagiri, I couldn't raise funds or do any other organization, because for multiple reasons. One, it was a last minute decision for me to go climb Dhaulagiri, because financially I was struggling just by myself to fund. So I was also raising funds for the expedition, crowdfunding. My colleagues and my friends, everybody were supporting this expedition, because I've been climbing back to back Denali, Manaslu, and the extra, and I've been using all my personal money, and I'm almost at the end of my savings. And also one other main reason was, in January in US, I was trying to climb Mount Rainier in winter to do the winter ascent. There was an incident. I've dislocated and fractured my right shoulder. So I was it happened on January 14th. So just get used to the new scenario, new change, which I never happened, and then struggling to even process it and whole thing. Then a week after that, I started physical therapy, and then started going to that, just working on that to recovery. And then my regular training was aside, because I just have to recover first to do anything outdoors, etc. So my whole every week, almost every day or every other day, I've been going for physical therapy, and there's an altitude training room in the same physical therapy location. So I've been like working there, trying to still have the training going on at the same time. So while I was doing that, so Dhaulagiri for me, it's like uh, coming out of an injury. I mean, I'm still working through the PG even now every day. Actually, my parents still don't know about the injury. I'm like trying to work around it, and coming out of injury, or like still working around with my shoulder fracture. So for me, Dhaulagiri or this whole expedition is like dealing with injury, or coming out of like such a traumatic incident of struggling, and then can I do it, or I just wanna see how my mental and physical strength is while I was going through such accident. So that's one of the major objective, climbing Dhaulagiri or going to Nepal, attempting it. And the whole during the whole Dhaulagiri expedition, I've had some various issues right from the beginning. I've arrived in Nepal in March 19th, and in Kathmandu, and 2 days after Kathmandu, on 21st March, we left Kathmandu for our acclimatization. We went to Pokhara, and from then to Jamsam, and then to Muktinab, just to slowly get higher and get used to the higher altitude. So I got really sick in Jamsam. Not sure what exactly caused it. Some kind of food poison, and having severe diarrhea. I was body was becoming so weak, and I was even we were scheduled to come back to Pokhara and leave to base camp on 26th March, and even in Pokhara on 25th I was feeling fine, but then I went out and ate something, and then came back to hotel, and then same story, I was throwing up, diarrhea multiple times, all night. So I was even considering to leave to base camp later, but then as we were living in helicopter and everybody as a team were supposed to leave, so it was already planned, so I couldn't. So I went ahead and left to base camp, reached the base camp on 26th. I was still weaker at the time, so I was still concerned about it, and after 1 or 2 days in base camp, I think on 28th or 29th, we started our acclimatization rotation, went to camp 1, came back to base camp, slept, came back to base camp, and after 1 or 2 days rest, I went back again for my second acclimatization rotation, because for not using oxygen, I just have to spend as much as time as I can on the higher altitude to even attempt or to even convince the expedition leader Mingma, and then so on my second acclimatization rotation, it was all of the Sherpas, because I was trying some higher loads to higher camp 2 or 3. So I was the only one. Everybody is taking rest in base camp because everybody's using oxygen. So slept in. This time directly went to camp 2, lower camp 2. Slept 1 night, 2 nights, and then because the weather was not good, and the next day rest day. So after that, went to higher camp 2 at 6,450 meters. Slept 1 night, and the other day. And the next day went little higher to 6,700 meters, and then came back to base camp. So after my 2 acclimatization rotation, I felt very stronger, and all my energy came back. So after a couple of days of rest at base camp, decided to leave at the base camp at 6th for summit, April 6th for summit push. So I was fine on the 5th night as well, but on 6th morning when I woke up, I was again trying to feel feel sick, and I couldn't eat like much at the base camp, and left the base camp at like 6 a.m. And after some time I was started getting slower, weaker, and then stopping once in a while, going to restroom off the trail. And I've stopped like 4 or 5 times just before like camp 1. And there was a doctor in our team, so he gave some medicine at camp 1, so I took it, and after that started feeling okay. So my plan was to go to higher camp 2 on the day, but then I reached to lower camp 2, ways lower than my previous while I was in second rotation. So my body was weaker and then colder, and then I couldn't go to higher camp 2, so I crashed at lower camp 2. And next day slept little late because I was weak and not feeling strong. So I woke up and then got ready at 7 a.m. Plan was to go to higher camp 3, but then it was late start because considering it's a long ways from lower camp 2 to higher camp 3. So I've decided to sleep at like one more night at higher camp 2 at 6,450 meters. And after that, in middle of the night at higher camp 2, I was throwing up at 2 a.m. and then got out to use the restroom. That was one day prior to the summit push, so I was still weak. So there were thoughts in my mind, can I do it being so weak, especially without oxygen? So I was doubting myself. But then the next day I have to go to camp 3 again, longer day, slower, and made it to camp 3 at like 4 p.m. I left the higher camp 2 at like 5 or 6 a.m. So it was a long day. So went to camp 3, took rest, and woke up at 11:30 at night, and then got ready, and then left camp 3 at 12:35 a.m. on April 9th. That's it, it's midnight. As it's a long way, like 1,000 meters, 7,300 to almost 7,300 approximately to 8,167 meters to the summit. And me not using oxygen, so I have to leave a little early than other teammates. So I left at 12:35 a.m. slow and steady, kept going. I've made it to summit at 11:20 a.m. but right before the summit I was need something from my backpack, so I removed my backpack from my shoulders, and the minute I kept down, it just slid down the mountain, just flew. There was no time for me to even realize and respond as quickly. So I lost my backpack, but it was a nice weather window, sunny, not so windy. And it happened right below the ridge line of the summit, so made it to the summit. And coming down, on my way down, I removed my gloves to see my hands. I was feeling colder, so it was windy, and then my glove flew off to my left glove. That's how this happened. So I came back to camp 3 with no gloves, just putting my hands in my down suit, and then just using the right hand to come down. And then I had another set of gloves at camp 3, so I've used those, and then came all the way, descended all the way to the base camp. So by the time I came to base camp, it was like 11:40 or almost midnight. So it was a 24-hour day. I left camp 3 at 12:30 a.m. came back to base camp at almost close to midnight. So long day, and then little mishaps of losing my backpack, and then losing my gloves, my hands exposed, my finger exposed, and then descending all the way. Got real tired, and then there was not much to do at the base camp at the time, so I was soaking my hands in the warm water, and then immediately next day took helicopter back to Pokhara. And because I couldn't get to Kathmandu because of the bad weather, so helicopter stopped in Pokhara, and then the day after came back to Kathmandu. So we made sure, like, get back as soon as possible, lower altitude, get more oxygen from the fingers to, like, don't get worse. So went to hospital in Kathmandu, Sivak, and then got to doctor, and then all this process.